We got a long question here from our friend Sarah. I'm not going to read it, but I'm going to give you the gist of it. Essentially, she goes on to say that amongst my friends, I tend to have a level of wisdom that allows me to serve them when they're having trouble in their lives. And I offer them certain ideas and perspectives and ways of being that support them as they get through their problems. And in the beginning, it was pretty interesting for her to share these ideas, and they would be very grateful for her. But now they start calling her things like prophet and oracle, putting almost like a godlike throne under her butt. And she's wondering, it's very uncomfortable because it's like, wait a second, guys, I'm not a god, I'm not a prophet, like I'm not an oracle of any sort. So I'm just your friend, and I happen to know these things. I think you know them too, but I have a way of sharing these ideas that kind of gets through your skull so that you can use them practically in your life. And but she's saying she's getting very uncomfortable. She wants to keep serving her friends in this way, but the whole idea that perhaps she's better than them or some sort of a prophet is a bit uncomfortable for her. And she comes to me because she's like, Elliot, I read the comments and people make statements like, Elliot, you're a prophet. Elliot, you're a god. And I wonder, how do you deal with that? Of course, if she's coming from the same line of work in this way that I am, we share ideas with people. She realizes, well, you're not so much a god, Elliot, right? I mean, so how do you handle people saying that shit to you? Doesn't it make you uncomfortable? Yes, it can make me uncomfortable, but it doesn't, because I have a bit of perspective for you, my friend. Let me come at you this way. We'll do a little bit of a history, travel down history back up to where we are today with regard to this idea of a living God and things of that nature, or prophets and oracles and stuff like that. But before I do that, I want to share with you one of my favorite quotes by Bruce Lee when he talks about I forget what movie it is. Maybe it's Enter the Dragon. I'm not sure, but he's talking to a young man and he points his finger to the moon and he says something to the effect of, don't look at my finger, because if you do, you'll miss all the heavenly glory. So it's like he's a finger pointing to the moon, and the person would have a tendency to like grab onto and latch to the finger. It's a fucking great finger and it's attached to you. You must be amazing. You must be a god. You must be some sort of prophet. You are perfect, right? That's a trap in that way. And he's saying, no, stop. Look at where I'm pointing, motherfucker. You're gonna miss it if you look at me. Right? Very profound, very helpful way to look at it for you as the pointer, and also to remind the people who are listening to you, wait a second, guys, I'm just pointing to all the heavenly glory. Get your eyes off me for a moment. Look, it's up there. You'll miss everything. So, wanted to share that with you. I've made a video about this in the past on my other channel. Maybe I'll link it up if I remember, but search my other channel, Strength Camp, for finger. I'm just a finger or something like that. Anyway, and I related to my fans in that particular way in that video. Many civilizations ago, if I could, I'm talking about like ancient Greek, Roman, Egyptian civilizations, where they had a political hierarchy that was very much enmeshed with religion or mythology, things of that nature. They would often recognize particular archetypical characters, types in individuals, and they would recognize that this person has a particular a unique kind of spirit, right? So they would say that the demon or the daemon, right, where we get the word diva, or the god is with you, right, is with that person. And they would recognize that this person was blessed in that particular way, in that they represent a particular archetype. And wherever they went, they were able to serve people with that particular power. Yours and mine is sort of like the power of the prophet. The word poet, is the root word of it is prophet. That's where it comes from. So we're speakers. That's all we do. We're just kind of talkers. We motivate people, excite people with our words. And the thing is that those ancient cultures, our ancestral cultures, didn't necessarily worship the being. They worshipped the archetype in that individual. right? So if I showed up and behaved in a very resourceful way for the world, it wasn't so much Elliot Hulse that they admired and looked up to, but the Elliot Hulse spirit, right? It's the spirit of an Elliot Hulse that they would recognize, and they might use that name, or they might use the name of another deity that they would have created for that particular time and place. It's the spirit of. It's the demon of. It's the muse, is another way they would describe it. The muse within him. It's not the container, it's what's coming through the container. It's not necessarily the flute, right, that plays the music, that makes the sound. It's the artist, and the spirit, spiros, breath. The spiros moving through the flute, right? You're the flute. You're just the flute, hollow reed, if you will. And then there's a spirit moving through you. So is the sound to be attributed to the flute? Or is the sound to be attributed to where the spirit is coming from, where the breath is coming from for the flute, right? And they recognized that it was the spirit, it was the breath, right? The inspiration. That word spirit is linked heavily to the word breath, breathing, expire, inspire, expire. So they always pointed to the spirit of the individual. A very spirited individual, or the spirits. They would thank the gods, not the man. And this is the way it was through most of human history up until the magnificent manifestation of Jesus Christ, right? And Jesus behaved in the same way and was an archetype of the Christ spirit in that particular way in that day and age, until the political structures at the time realized just how dangerous a dude like Jesus really is, and they made him special. Now, for those of you who worship Jesus, look, do your research on the history of the church, particularly the Catholic Church, and you may or may not be Catholic, but know that a significant portion of your ideals that you think are yours come from the political structure of the Catholic Church. And if you don't think the Catholic Church is a political body, then you really just haven't paid attention to history. Do your studies, read history, study history. The brilliance of the political structure, the religious political structure at that particular time said, look, this Jesus guy, we can't have any more of him. So what we need to do is make him untouchable. Let's make him a god. They all decided this at the conference of Nicaea, right? They all decided that it would be in our best interest, political and religious structure, power, right, the oligarchy, to make Jesus something of a god, not the spirit of Christ through him, but him himself. So you can't be him. He's the one and only. I am the one and only, they have him say. Very dangerous thing also, because then it diminishes the power of that Christ spirit showing up in other people. And it even removes the philosophy, the idea, the very resourceful way of saying that spirits reemerge. Archetypical spirits reemerge in certain individuals. You, my friend, are the expression or the reincarnation, if you will, of a prophetic spirit. Okay? Your physical body has taken in the archetype of the prophetic spirit. You are an oracle in that way, but not you. I think her name's Sarah. It's not you. It's the spirit showing up in you. And it gives you a place of humility. It allows you to move from a place of humility when you look at it that way. And also when you explain it to your friends the way I'm explaining it right now. Don't worship me. These are just the words coming through. This is the air, the breath coming through my instrument. Thank the blower of the air. Jesus would say, my Father. Right? I'm going to read a little bit of what Jesus says in this regard also, because if you study the words of Jesus, you'll find that he also is like, look, not by me, but through my Father. It's my Father, he keeps saying, my Father. And then he goes on to point to, and I'm going to read from the Bible here for a moment, bear with me, where he says, look, you can do the same shit. I think this is from Matthew. He goes, the words I speak are not my own, blasphemy, but from my Father, who lives in me and does his work through me. Now Jesus is saying right now, right there, it's not me, motherfuckers. It's the Spirit moving through me. It's my Father. moving through me. He happens to call it the Father. You call it whatever you want, but there's this Spirit moving through him. And he just says, just believe that, the Father is moving through me. Trust that the Christ Spirit, the Father, is moving through me. But again, I'm going to just reiterate his words. The words I speak are not my own. Those aren't Jesus' words. Just like my words aren't my words in many instances, depending on how connected I am when I'm making these videos. I always aim to support you guys with the words that I share, but sometimes I'm in the way. Jesus, or Elliot, I'm about to call myself Jesus. The flesh becomes a deterrent, gets in the way. I have an ego also. I ate some food that didn't jive with my physiology last night, so I'm a little grumpy. Whatever it is, the flesh gets in the way, so the spirit is obstructed in its ability to move through. So you got to recognize that there's a Jesus in the way. There's an Elliot in the way. There's a Sarah in the way. But the minute you can get out of the way, recognizing yourself, recognizing others, and allow them to recognize in you that they aren't your words, especially the more potent gems. Sometimes I watch my videos and I'm like, damn, what did I eat that day? Because that was good. I'll watch my videos and I'm like, holy shit, that's not me talking. Okay? I'm not saying I'm a Jesus. I'm not saying you should worship me, because if you listen closely, it's anything but that. It's receive these words, because they're happening through me. And that's what Jesus says. Look, receive these words. Just trust that they're not coming from me, they're coming from my Father. He goes on, and this is why I love reading the Bible in this particular way, through an empowered stance as opposed to worshiping and suppression. Jesus goes on, I tell you the truth. Anyone who believes in me will do the same works I've done, and even greater. Blasphemy again! And of course I'll have biblical scholars and theologists, have their perspective on why he said that, and what, how it absolutely does not mean that you're powerful. It means that, you're still a slave to Jesus and our superstition about him. Jesus is plainly sitting there saying what I'm saying to you right now. I tell you the truth, that anybody who believes what I'm saying right now, that this is coming through the Father, will do the same works I've done. And even greater works. It's a matter of trust. So when you, my friend, share this with your friends, of course, you can take the humble stance of it's not me, it's my Father. But also know that if you trust my Father, you trust the Spirit, you trust the way, you trust God, you trust whatever you want to call it, you too can do the same thing, even greater. Now, the nerve of Jesus to say that about God, right? That you could do even greater. Hey, pull out your old King James Version. It's in there. So that's it, folks. Look, you, my friend, are gifted in this particular way. You are a prophet in that there is a spirit moving through you that serves the world with ideas that have been suppressed or forgotten. And you have a particular way of sharing it with people that allows us to get through the thickness and the fog of mental conditioning. I like to think that I have the same sort of skill. I mean, almost 1 million subscribers between my two channels kind of says, yeah, I do have that skill. And I take no credit for it whatsoever. Absolutely not, because it's the Father speaking through me. And you could do the same thing. Done.